Hi, I'm Madeleine Winter and I'm a hand-in-hand instructor based in Sydney in Australia and working with parents across the world via the web. And today I want to talk about a particular aspect of limit setting. Um, it's about setting up the framework for limit setting so that you are not caught in an endless series of skirmishes, which ultimately just wear you down and which often you won't win. It's the idea of workable and unworkable situations. Trying to set limits in an unworkable situation is a real trap for parents, I think. And you're probably wondering, what's an unworkable situation? Well, an example is, for instance, a recent support call that I was running for parents. And one of the parents on the call, her children kept interrupting her. Now, this call was really important to her. She'd made a commitment to being there. It was useful. A support call is a bit of space for you as a parent to think about and plan for your parenting and to download some of the tough feelings that come up around parenting. It's a really good place to be part of a group of parents who are committed to the same thing. So it's worth getting to, and this mum had really made a commitment to be there, but she didn't have a lock on the door. So her children just kept interrupting. And she was so sweet. She would give them information. Mummy's busy now. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Just close the door. And when that didn't work, she would reason with them. This is Mummy's time. You go back outside and I'll be there in 5 minutes. Well, that didn't really go down very well. And then she started bargaining with them. You go out there and then when I come back, we can play some Lego together. And I mean, that's such a sweet bargain, but it wasn't working. Her children kept interrupting her. It just wasn't a workable expectation that the children would be able to respect that limit. For some reason, they're on edge. They're certainly safe enough, but they were on edge and they wanted their mother's attention. And in any case, I think children have an uncanny ability to detect that your attention has gone somewhere else, and they can go to great efforts to pull it back. So for whatever reason, without the sort of warm and constant glow of their mum's attention, the feelings, whatever feelings they were carrying around in their emotional backpack, bubbled up, and there was no way they were going to leave mum in the room to herself. If this mum really wanted to get some time to do the work that she needed to do, my guess is that she really needed to relocate to what I call the parent office, which is the car. I've done plenty of good work in the car, sometimes parked down the road if necessary. But she kind of couldn't do it. Another example of an unworkable situation was I was recently talking to a parent who was really worried about their daughter's weight and the amount of food their child was eating. Now, there's a whole lot that could be said about helping our children with body image, and that's probably got a lot to do with helping ourselves with issues around body image. But in this case, this mother described to me what was effectively an impossible situation where if there was anything sweet in the house, this child just would eat the lot. They'd ask for one biscuit or cookie, and before you know where you were, they've eaten half the packet. So that's an unworkable situation. Her daughter had already over time shown that she wasn't able to exercise good or rational judgment around what was useful or good for her to eat. Sweet stuff in the house. With sweet stuff in the house, this mum was really already on the back foot and finding herself in a situation where she was having to deal with the issue after the damage was done. Whereas if there hadn't been sweet stuff in the house, it would be different. I think setting limits is clearer when the limit is clear and not negotiable. Then when you bring the limit, honey, I'm not going to buy sweet stuff. It's clear, and if there's an upset to be had, it's out there and you know what it is. Rather than a series of skirmishes where it gets loaded up with, for instance, this mum's disappointment about her girl's lack of willpower or worries about having eaten the stuff. It's better to be able to just say, you know, sweetheart, there's no sweet stuff in the house, and then know that there will be an upset. That's what limits are for. We find ourselves setting limits, and almost by definition, we're setting the limit because our kids are carrying around some emotional tension that set them off track. So we know that we're up for a limit setting exercise. We can focus on helping our children release the tension, the emotional tension they have around the limit, rather than getting caught in a negotiation around the edges of whatever the thing is. Another example of an area which really quickly moves into the territory of unworkable limits is screen time. It's often quite difficult to set and hold limits around screen time. And in fact, one mother I know has a rule that there's no screen time during the week. And that's because she found herself in an endless series of arguments about what was allowed and what was not, and how long he'd been on the computer and how long he hadn't, and what he was doing on it. It was much harder for her to define what the thing was she was going to set her limit round, and she was kind of worn down by this endless series of negotiations. So it was easier to just say, you know, there's no screen time during the week. And with that one, you may have to figure out how they're going to do their homework. You may need some technical support in order to help you hold the limit, some kind of kill switch on the internet. But you'll be dealing with your child's upset over a clear and absolute limit, and you won't be tempted to give way or being pushed to give way. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for being flexible sometimes, but when you have an issue which has been a constant source of frustration and where you've been struggling to hold a limit around it, you want to set up the framework for that limit so that it's firm. That will allow you to prepare yourself for the inevitable upset that's going to come when your child bumps into it. I think you don't want to end up in a situation where you're having to be the enforcer in some way that's going to take a lot of energy, which, you know, blurry limits and, you know, lots of negotiation around them will turn out that way. Why do we get caught? There's a question like, why do we get caught like this in unworkable situations? And I think it's because sometimes it's because we don't want to be mean. And there really is a place for give and take. And when things are going smoothly, we really do want to try and have things go our child's way when we're not going to lose anything by doing that. But in a situation where our children have shown that they really don't have good judgment over and over, and that they can't sort of regulate themselves, then we really need not to entertain. It's a kind of fantasy that they'll be able to manage at this time. And with screens, the digital world is designed to very deliberately to capture our attention and keep it there. So you're already at a disadvantage if you're trying to set limits around screen time. So you're going to need to be pretty clear. You've got a lot of pressure on you to allow more screens. It's not just that your kids don't want to do their homework. It's that this thing is just really quite addictive and been very deliberately designed that way. So because we don't, we want to be kind to our kids, we want them to feel like they're in charge of things. The place where we can do that is special time. Either announced, timed. That's the best way, because they actually can tell that you're giving them your full attention. But sometimes as kids get older, it's a little harder to do it directly like that. So we need to kind of figure out ways of walking alongside our kids with a deliberate decision in our own mind that what we're going to do is special time. But special time works as the place where we can truly be on their side and where things can really go their way. And that helps us get around feeling sort of, well, we may still feel bad about it, but feeling that somehow setting a limit is unreasonable. We know our child has had their cup filled with things going their way in special time. That's what it's for. And it actually makes it possible to set firm limits in places where we really need to. One of the other reasons that I think we get caught here is that we're hoping often to appeal to our child's sense of reason. We do this a lot. And the problem with this is that our children have already shown that their what I might call is their reasoning mind is not available. When you find yourself needing to set reasonable limits, almost by definition, your child's off track. Their mind is flooded with feelings and they're looking for an opportunity to offload them. That's what a limit provides. Their reasoning mind is offline. And if you can bring a limit and listen to the upset, quite often, maybe not immediately, but in general, that's what clears the way to thinking. Thinking follows that upset. It generally doesn't happen while someone's full of upset. We're very optimistic, I think, as parents, and we hope that reason will win the day, even though it really hasn't. I think there's a piece of work for us as parents to do to, it's kind of like getting our power back in a way, not being sort of scuttled by our hopefulness. So we often need a place, and listening time is a great place to do this. We often need a place where we can sort out what's getting in the way of setting workable limits and kind of noticing what's workable and unworkable. In listening time with the listening partnership, we can blow off our frustrations, we can work through our feelings and face up to how things really are rather than how we would like them to be. And that's a very powerful thing to do. So you can use listening time to think through the problem and work on what it is that's getting in your way of actually seeing that a firm limit needs to be set. So good luck. I'd love to hear what you figure out about workable and unworkable situations. What unworkable situations have you found yourself in? And how have you sort of set clear limits to help work your way out of them? I'll be back next week with a bit more about setting limits. And it's a pleasure to have spent time with you here